I need to tell you what happened in that courtroom. Not the version that made the papers, the real one. The one where I watched my sister destroy herself to prove a point that nobody asked her to make. It started with a phone call at 2:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock since midnight, waiting for my sleeping pills to work. When the phone rang, I already knew something was wrong. You don't get good news at 2:47 a.m. Linda's in the hospital. That was all Mom said, 4 words, but the way her voice cracked on hospital told me everything else. I drove 90 miles in the dark, doing 85 on I-94, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. The whole way there, I kept thinking about the last thing Linda said to me. We'd been arguing about her engagement to Richard. She'd only known him 8 months. "You don't understand what it's like," she'd said, "to be 53 and have someone finally look at you like you're worth something." I'd wanted to tell her she was always worth something, but the words got stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth, the way they always did with Linda. The hospital in Traverse City was one of those sprawling medical complexes that look more like airports than places where people go to die. I found Mom in the kidney unit, 3rd floor, sitting in a green plastic chair that squeaked every time she moved. "Stage 4 kidney failure," she said before I could ask. "They're saying she needs dialysis immediately." But here's the thing. Here's the thing that would later matter in that courtroom. Linda was sitting up in bed, fully alert, arguing with the nurses about her IV placement. Not gasping for air, not unconscious, not even particularly pale. She looked annoyed. "Karen," she said when she saw me, "did Mom drag you all the way up here? I told her not to call anyone yet." Yet. That word would haunt me later. Such a small word to carry so much weight. Richard arrived an hour later, still in his golf clothes. I'd only met him twice before, once at their engagement party, once at a dinner where he'd spent the entire meal checking his phone. He was handsome in that way men with money often are. Good teeth, good watch, good at making you feel like you were interrupting something more important. "Baby," he said, taking Linda's hand. "The doctor explained everything. We'll get through this." Linda's face did something then, something I'd never seen before. It went completely blank, like she was observing him from very far away. "Will we?" she asked. He squeezed her hand, checked his phone, squeezed her hand again. "I have that meeting in Chicago," he said, "but I can cancel if—" "No," Linda said quickly. "Don't cancel anything." He left 20 minutes later. Mom and I stayed. We stayed through the first dialysis treatment, which Linda handled with unsettling calm. We stayed through the social worker explaining treatment schedules. We stayed through the nephrologist showing us charts and numbers that all meant the same thing. Linda's kidneys were failing, and without dialysis or a transplant, she would die. Except Linda kept forgetting to look sick. She'd grimace when the nurses were watching, then text normally when they left. She'd close her eyes and moan during the doctor's rounds, then sit up and critique the hospital's cable selection 5 minutes later. "Something's not right," I told Mom in the cafeteria. "Don't," Mom said, "just don't." But I couldn't stop noticing things. Like how Linda knew exactly which symptoms to describe, how she never mixed them up or forgot what she'd said earlier. How her medical knowledge seemed surprisingly comprehensive for someone who'd been healthy her whole life. 3 days into her hospital stay, Richard sent flowers. Not came with flowers, sent them. The card said, "Thinking of you, R." Linda read it once, then asked me to throw them away. "They'll just die in here anyway," she said. That night, while Mom slept in the chair beside Linda's bed, Linda asked me something strange. "If you were dying," she said, "what would Paul do?" Paul was my ex-husband. We'd been divorced for 6 years. "He's not really the benchmark for devoted partners," I said. "But when you were married, if you'd gotten sick." I thought about it, really thought about it. "He would have been there," I said finally, "until it got inconvenient. Then he would have found reasons to be somewhere else." Linda nodded like I'd confirmed something. Richard hasn't called since yesterday, she said. He's in Chicago. It's a 2-hour drive. She was right. Of course she was right. But I didn't know what she wanted me to say. The next morning, Dr. Patel ordered more tests. Comprehensive metabolic panel, urinalysis, kidney biopsy. Linda agreed to everything with disturbing enthusiasm. Most patients are terrified of biopsies, the nurse mentioned to me privately. Your sister actually seemed excited. That afternoon, while Linda was in radiology, I did something I shouldn't have. I looked through her phone. She'd left it charging on the nightstand, face up, notifications visible. I told myself I was just checking to see if Richard had messaged, but once I started looking, I couldn't stop. Her search history from the past 3 months was a medical textbook of kidney disease. Symptoms, progression, treatment options, how to fail a kidney function test, what medications cause false positives, how long activated charcoal stays in your system. That last one made my hands go cold. Activated charcoal, the substance that could, if taken in large enough quantities, mimic kidney failure in blood tests. I was still staring at her phone when she was wheeled back in. Find anything interesting? She asked. I should have lied, should have put the phone down and pretended I hadn't seen anything. But I've never been good at pretending, not like Linda. What are you doing? I asked. She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled, not her real smile, the one she used for family photos and church potlucks, the smile that never quite reached her eyes. I'm finding out the truth, she said. About what? About whether Richard loves me enough to stay. The room felt suddenly airless. Linda, I said, this is insane. Is it? She adjusted her hospital gown, wincing theatrically. He asked me to marry him after knowing me for 6 months, said he'd love me in sickness and health, said I was his everything. Shouldn't those words mean something? Not if you have to test them like this. How else do you test them? You don't, you trust. She laughed then, actually laughed. Like you trusted Paul, like Mom trusted Dad, like every woman in our family trusted men who left the second things got difficult. I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come, because she wasn't wrong. Our family history was littered with abandonments, small ones and large ones, men who promised forever and delivered until Tuesday. But you're not actually sick, I said. The tests say I am. Because you're making them say that. She shrugged. Medical science is interpretable, symptoms are subjective, pain is whatever the patient says it is. And Richard, what happens when he finds out? If he stays, she said, he'll never find out. I'll have a miraculous recovery, a misdiagnosis. These things happen. And if he doesn't stay? Her face went hard. Then I'll know what I need to know. I should have told someone right then. Should have walked straight to the nurse's station and reported what she was doing. But I didn't. Because part of me, the ugly, honest part, wanted to know too. Richard came back the next day, brought coffee and excuses, a client emergency, a contract that couldn't wait, the traffic was horrible, his phone had died. Linda listened to each excuse with that same blank expression. I understand, she said. Work is important. You're important too, he said quickly. Am I? Of course, God, Linda, of course you are. But he was already checking his phone again. That night, Linda's condition worsened. The doctors couldn't explain the sudden decline in her numbers. They ordered more tests, started discussing long-term treatment options. The word transplant was mentioned for the first time. Richard's response was to book a business trip to Dallas. It's been planned for months, he explained. I can't cancel now, you understand, right? Linda understood. We all understood. Mom cried in the bathroom where she thought we couldn't hear her. I sat in the hospital corridor, wondering if I was complicit in something terrible or watching something necessary. Linda lay in her bed, taking careful notes in a journal she hid under her pillow. On the 5th day, something unexpected happened. Richard's mother arrived. Alina Brennan was 71 years old, wore pearls to the grocery store, and had buried 2 husbands. She took one look at Linda in that hospital bed and made a decision that would eventually lead us all to that courtroom. "I'm getting a second opinion," she announced. "Mom, the doctors here are excellent," Richard said. "I'm not questioning the doctors. I'm questioning the situation." She said, "situation," like it was something that needed to be scraped off her shoe. Linda and Alina locked eyes across the room, 2 women measuring each other, calculating. "Richard," Alina said, "go get me coffee. Real coffee, not that hospital swamp water." "Mom." "Now." He went. The moment the door closed, Alina moved closer to Linda's bed. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly. Linda's expression didn't change. "I'm dying. Is that what you mean?" "No, you're not. Your complexion is too good. Your energy is too consistent. And you're far too interested in my son's reactions for someone facing organ failure." The 2 women stared at each other. "I've seen dying," Alina continued. "Real dying, this isn't it. The tests can be manipulated. I should know. My first husband tried to fake a heart condition to get out of our prenup." Linda's jaw tightened. "I don't want Richard's money." "No," Alina agreed. "You want something much more expensive. You want his soul." "I want to know if he loves me." "And you think this is how you find out? By testing him like a laboratory rat?" "How else do you find out?" Alina sat down in the visitor's chair. For a moment, she looked every one of her 71 years. "You don't," she said finally. "You gamble. Every marriage is a gamble. You place your bet and you hope." "That's not enough." "It has to be." "Why?" "Because the alternative is this." Alina gestured at the hospital room. "This elaborate theater, this manipulation, this lie that will poison everything that comes after, even if he passes your test." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Real ones, I think." "He's already failing," she whispered. "Yes," Alina said, "he is." They sat in silence until Richard returned with the coffee. He'd bought Linda flowers from the gift shop. Carnations, already half dead. That night, after Richard and Alina left, Linda asked me to help her sit up. "I need to tell you something," she said. But before she could continue, alarms started going off. Real alarms. Her blood pressure had spiked. Her oxygen levels were dropping. The nurses rushed in, pushed me aside. "She's going into kidney failure," one of them shouted. "Real failure, get the doctor now." The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. The girl who cried wolf, finally meeting the actual wolf. They rushed her to surgery, emergency dialysis, then ICU. The doctor explained that sometimes the stress of prolonged illness could trigger actual organ failure. The body, confused by mixed signals, sometimes forgot the difference between performance and reality. Linda had played sick so convincingly that her body had believed her. She was in the ICU for 3 days. Richard never came. He sent his lawyer instead. The man arrived on day 2, uncomfortable in his expensive suit, holding papers that needed to be signed. "Mr. Brennan wants to ensure that Linda has the best possible care," he said. "He's setting up a medical trust, very generous terms." "He's leaving her," Mom said. It wasn't a question. The lawyer adjusted his tie. "He feels that, given the circumstances, it would be best if they postponed the wedding indefinitely." "Postponed," I repeated. "Indefinitely," he confirmed. I wanted to throw something at him. Maybe the dead carnations. Maybe the chair, maybe myself. But Linda, when we told her, just nodded. "I knew," she said. "I knew the moment he sent you instead of coming himself." She signed the papers with a hand that shook from more than just medication. The trust was generous, more than generous. It would cover all her medical expenses, provide a monthly income, ensure she never wanted for anything. Except love. Except the one thing she'd actually been testing for. Richard had failed her test, but he'd done it with such expensive grace that it felt like she'd lost twice. Elena came to see her one more time before Linda was released. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" Linda asked. "For being right. For raising a son who couldn't rise to the occasion." They looked at each other, two women on opposite sides of a war nobody had won. "Can I ask you something?" Linda said. Elena nodded. "Your first husband, the one who faked the heart condition, what happened to him?" "He had a real heart attack 2 years later. I held his hand while he died. He spent his last breath apologizing for not trusting me enough to just tell the truth about wanting out." Linda closed her eyes. "And you forgave him?" "No," Elena said, "but I understood him. Sometimes that's all we get." After Elena left, Linda asked me to call her lawyer. "I want to sue Richard," she said. "For what? Breaking an engagement?" "For emotional distress, for breach of promise, for fraud." "Linda, you're the one who—" "I know what I did," she snapped. "But he's the one who promised to love me in sickness and health. He's the one who lied." I wanted to argue, but I could see the logic. Twisted as it was, there was a truth in it. Linda had faked an illness, yes, but Richard had faked love, which was the greater fraud. The lawyer she hired was young, hungry, and fascinated by the case. "It's not technically illegal to test someone's loyalty," he said. "Unethical, maybe, but not illegal. And if we can prove that Richard made promises he never intended to keep." "Can you prove that?" I asked. "His text messages to his business partner suggest he was having doubts about the engagement from the beginning. He called it a midlife mistake in one message." Linda flinched. "When?" "2 weeks after he proposed." The room went very quiet. "He knew," Linda said finally. "He knew he didn't love me, and he proposed anyway." "The question," the lawyer said, "is whether we can convince a jury that's worse than what you did." The case took 6 months to get a court. In that time, Linda's kidneys partially recovered. The doctors called it a miracle. Linda called it ironic justice. Her body, having committed to the performance, couldn't quite let go of the role. She would need dialysis for the rest of her life. 3 times a week, 4 hours each time. "I manifested my own punishment," she told me one afternoon, hooked up to the machine that now kept her alive. "How's that for karma?" Richard hired the best legal team money could buy. 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than my car. They painted Linda as a manipulator, a fraud, a woman so desperate for love she would fake a terminal illness to keep a man. They weren't wrong. But Linda's lawyer painted a different picture. A woman who had been pursued by a wealthy man who knew from the beginning that he was using her as a placeholder. A temporary comfort between marriages to women who actually mattered. The text messages were damning. "She's not wife material," Richard had written to his brother, "but she's grateful enough to not cause problems." "Then why propose?" his brother had asked. "Mom's been on my case about settling down. This buys me time." Linda heard those words read aloud in court and didn't flinch, but I saw her hands clench in her lap, knuckles white as bone. Richard took the stand on day 3. He was composed, articulate, apologetic in all the right places. He admitted to having doubts, admitted to being overwhelmed by Linda's sudden illness, admitted to handling things poorly. "But I never lied about loving her," he said, looking directly at Linda. "I thought I did. I wanted to. The illness just made me realize I wasn't strong enough for that kind of commitment." "So you're saying," Linda's lawyer clarified, "that you would have married her if she'd stayed healthy?" "Yes. Even though you called her a midlife mistake." Richard's jaw tightened. "That was taken out of context." "What context makes that acceptable?" I was confused. Marriage is a big step. "So is faking an illness," the lawyer said. "But at least my client was testing for truth. You were simply lying to avoid inconvenience." The judge had to call for order. Linda took the stand the next day. She wore the blue dress she'd bought for their engagement party. The one Richard had said made her eyes look like the ocean. I wondered if he remembered. "Why did you do it?" her lawyer asked. Linda looked at the jury. 12 people who would decide whether her pain was worth anything in legal terms. My father left when I was 7, she said. Went out for milk and never came back. My first husband left when I found out I couldn't have children. My second husband left for his secretary. I've spent my whole life watching men promise forever and deliver weekends. She paused, took a breath. When Richard proposed after 6 months, I wanted to believe him, but I needed to know. If I was going to trust again, I needed to know it was real, so I created a test. By faking kidney failure. By seeing if his love was conditional. And was it? Linda looked at Richard. He was studying his hands. Everything is conditional, she said. I just wanted to know the conditions up front. The prosecution's cross-examination was brutal. They had evidence of her internet searches, her purchased medical supplies, the activated charcoal she'd ordered online. They painted her as calculating, manipulative, dangerous. You deliberately deceived medical professionals, the prosecutor said. Yes. You wasted valuable medical resources. Yes. You committed fraud. Yes. Then how can you sit here and claim to be the victim? Linda was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm not claiming to be innocent, she said finally. Just honest about my dishonesty. Richard is still pretending his lies were love. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Mom and I waited in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking terrible coffee and not talking about what verdict we hoped for. Because the truth was, we didn't know. If Linda won, it would validate her manipulation. If Richard won, it would excuse his cruelty. There were no good outcomes, only different degrees of wrong. Elena found us there on the 2nd day. May I? She asked, gesturing to an empty chair. We nodded. She sat down, perfectly composed despite the circumstances. I've been thinking, she said, about what Linda asked me, about forgiveness versus understanding. We waited. I think, she continued, that both my son and your sister are guilty of the same crime. They both believed love could be measured, tested, proven. They both failed to understand that love is not a diagnosis. It's not a test result. It's a choice you make every morning, especially when you don't feel like making it. That's very philosophical, Mom said dryly. It's very expensive wisdom, Elena replied. Cost me 2 marriages to learn it. The bailiff appeared in the doorway. They're back. We filed into the courtroom like attendees at a funeral, which in a way we were. Something had died here. Trust, maybe, or hope, or just the illusion that love could be guaranteed. The jury foreman stood. In the matter of Linda Morrison versus Richard Brennan, we find the defendant liable for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Linda's lawyer smiled. We award damages in the amount of $1. The smile vanished. Furthermore, the foreman continued, we recommend that both parties seek professional counseling and refrain from any further contact with each other. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to agree. This court has seen many cases of hearts broken by deception, but rarely have we seen 2 people so committed to mutual destruction while calling it love. He looked at Linda, then at Richard. You both got what you were testing for, he said. You discovered exactly how conditional your relationship was. The tragedy is that you had to destroy it to prove it. Outside the courthouse, Richard and his lawyers walked one direction. Linda and I walked the other. We didn't look back. There was nothing to see. Elena caught up with us at Linda's car. Here, she said, handing Linda an envelope. What is this? A check for your medical expenses. Not from Richard, from me. Linda tried to hand it back. I can't. You can. You will. Consider it payment for teaching my son a lesson he should have learned long ago. What lesson? That manipulation and neglect are 2 sides of the same counterfeit coin. Neither can buy what they're trying to purchase. She walked away before Linda could respond. In the car, Linda opened the envelope. The check was for $200,000. I can't keep this, she said. You can't afford not to, I pointed out. Dialysis isn't free. She laughed, but it sounded like crying. I poisoned myself to prove a point that proved itself wrong. What point? That love could be tested. Can't it? She looked at me, and for the first time since this all began, she looked like my sister again. Not the woman performing illness. Not the victim seeking justice. Just Linda, 53 years old, tired and sick and sorry. Love can be tested, she said, but the test destroys it, like cutting open a bird to see how it flies. We drove home in silence. That was 3 months ago. Linda still needs dialysis 3 times a week. She goes alone, says she needs the time to think, about what she doesn't say. Richard remarried last month, a woman from Dallas, 20 years younger. Alina sent us the announcement, though I'm not sure why. Maybe as proof that some lessons are never learned. Maybe as a warning. Linda keeps the announcement on her refrigerator, held up by a magnet shaped like a kidney. Why? I asked her once. To remind myself, she said. Of what? That I was right about him. Is that worth what it cost? She was quiet for a long time. Ask me again when I figure out what it cost, she said. I see her every week now. We sit in the dialysis center while machines do the work her kidneys can't. She's writing a book about the experience. She calls it the test. What's the message? I asked her yesterday. That there isn't one, she said. Just a warning. About what? About the danger of getting exactly what you ask for. The nurse came to check her vitals then. Blood pressure elevated but stable. Weight acceptable. Mood hard to read. How are you feeling? The nurse asked. Like I'm being kept alive by a machine I earned through my own stupidity, Linda said. The nurse laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. But here's the thing I haven't told anyone until now. Last week, I was going through Linda's mail while she was at treatment, helping her pay bills, keeping her life organized while she sat tethered to that machine. I found a letter from a laboratory, results from a genetic test she'd had done 6 months before she met Richard, before any of this began. Polycystic kidney disease, genetic, progressive, inevitable. She would have needed dialysis eventually anyway. She had known, the whole time she had known. The illness she faked was real. The test she created was unnecessary. The man she tested was always going to fail because she had set him up to face something even she wasn't ready to face. I confronted her about it that night. You knew, I said, holding up the letter. She nodded. You knew you were really sick. I knew I would be, eventually. So why? Because, eventually, isn't a timeline Richard would accept. I needed to know what he'd do when eventually became immediately. You could have just told him the truth. The truth, she laughed. The truth was that I had a genetic disease that would slowly destroy my kidneys over the next decade. You think that would have changed anything? It would have been honest. Honesty is a luxury for people who can afford to be left. We sat in her living room, the sound of her oxygen concentrator humming in the background. A machine she didn't need yet but had gotten used to having. Like a prop she couldn't put down even after the play had ended. Do you regret it? I asked. Which part? The lying, the testing, the court case? Any of it, all of it. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw her as she'd been before all this. My older sister who used to braid my hair for church, who taught me to drive in the Kmart parking lot, who held my hand through my divorce even while planning her 3rd wedding. I regret, she said slowly, that I needed to know badly enough to destroy everything to find out. And what did you find out? That Richard would have left me anyway. That the kidney failure just gave him an excuse to do it faster. That Alina was right. Love isn't something you test. It's something you risk. Would you do it again? She was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. Yes, she said finally, but differently. How? I'd skip the testing, go straight to the leaving, save us both the theatrical intermission. That's cynical. That's realistic. Richard was never going to love me through sickness. I was never going to trust him without proof. We were doomed from the first date. The kidney failure just made it obvious. Then why did you say yes when he proposed? She smiled, sad and knowing. Because I'm 53 years old. Because I was tired of first dates that went nowhere. Because he looked at me like I mattered, even if it was temporary. Because sometimes you take what you can get, even when you know it's not enough. That's not love. No. She agreed. It's not, but it's what passes for it when you're desperate enough. I wanted to argue, but I remembered my own marriage. The compromises, the negotiations, the slow realization that love was less a feeling than a series of small surrenders. The real irony, Linda continued, is that if I'd done nothing, if I'd just waited for my kidneys to fail naturally, Richard would have been married to me when it happened. He'd have been trapped by actual vows instead of just promises. The divorce would have been messier, but the outcome would have been the same. You don't know that. Don't I? She pulled up something on her phone, a text message thread. His business partner sent me these during the trial, thought they might help my case. The messages were from a year ago, before the engagement, before the illness, before everything. Richard, I'm thinking of proposing to Linda. Partner, why? Richard, Mom won't shut up about grandkids. Linda's past that age. Perfect placeholder until I find someone real. Partner, that's cold even for you. Richard, it's practical. She's grateful enough to not ask for much, pretty enough to not embarrass me, desperate enough to say yes. I felt sick reading them. When did you get these? I asked. During jury deliberation. Why didn't you use them? Because they would have won me the case, but lost me the point. What point? That I didn't need to test him. He had already failed before the test began. We sat with that truth between us, heavy and undeniable. You know what the worst part is, Linda said. What? I still love him, or the idea of him, or the person I thought he could be if I was just sick enough or well enough or enough. That's not love, that's grief. Is there a difference? I didn't have an answer for that. Mom called then, wanting to know if we'd eaten dinner. Such a normal question in such an abnormal situation. We told her we'd order pizza. We didn't. Instead, we sat in Linda's living room until the sun went down, not talking about Richard or kidneys or court cases. Just sitting with the truth of what had happened and what was still happening. Because Linda's kidneys were still failing. Slowly but certainly. The fake illness had become real, or maybe it had always been real and the faking was just rehearsal. She would need a transplant eventually. Had already started the testing process. I'd offered to be tested as a match, so had Mom. Even Alina had quietly offered through her lawyer. I don't want anyone's kidney, Linda had said. You'll die without one, the doctor had explained. I'll die with one too, just later. But she'd agreed to be put on the list. More to stop us from worrying than out of any real hope. The waiting list was 5 years long. Linda's kidneys might last too. I'm going to tell you something, Linda said that night, after the sun had fully set and we were sitting in darkness because neither of us wanted to turn on the lights. Okay. I've been seeing someone. I nearly fell off the couch. What, who, when? A man from my dialysis center, Robert. He's been on dialysis for 7 years. Heart problems led to kidney problems. Same boat, different leak. And you're dadding. We're sitting next to each other 3 times a week for 4 hours. We've run out of small talk, had to move on to big talk. What kind of big talk? The kind where you admit you faked an illness to test a man's love and ended up actually sick. You told him. Everyone at the dialysis center knows. We're a small community. Gossip travels through IV lines. What did he say? He said he understood. His wife left him after his first heart attack. Couldn't handle the lifestyle changes. He spent 2 years convinced no one would ever love him with a broken heart and broken kidneys. And now? Now he knows they won't, but he's okay with that. That's depressing. That's peaceful, There's a difference. I wanted to ask more about Robert, but something in Linda's tone told me to leave it alone. Some things were too fragile to examine closely. I need to tell you one more thing, Linda said. I'm not sure I can handle one more thing. The trial, the dollar they awarded me, I had it framed. Why? To remind myself of my value in the eyes of justice. That's not your value, isn't it? I mean, when you subtract the lying and the manipulation and the testing and the game playing, what's left? What am I worth? More than $1. Prove it. And there it was, the challenge, the test, the same need for proof that had started everything. I can't prove it, I said. That's the point. Worth isn't something you prove, it's something you accept. Easy to say when you're not hooked to a machine 3 times a week. Easy to say when you're not the one who put yourself there. It was cruel what I said, but also true, and Linda knew it. I dream about it sometimes, she said. The moment I decided to fake being sick, I dream I choose differently. Tell Richard about the genetic test. Let him decide with all the information. What happens in the dream? He leaves anyway, but cleaner, kinder, without the lawyers and the courtroom and the public humiliation. Do you think that's true? I think it doesn't matter now. She was right. It didn't matter. What was done was done. What was broken was broken. But people keep living with broken things. Broken hearts, broken kidneys, broken trust. That's what Linda was doing. Living with the broken pieces of a test that had worked too well. Robert came to dinner last week. A quiet man with careful hands and eyes that had seen too much. He brought flowers, not roses or carnations, but sunflowers. Bright and honest and impossible to fake. Linda tells me you're a teacher, he said to me. High school English. Must be hard, teaching kids to analyze stories. Sometimes, they always want to know what things mean. Sometimes things don't mean anything, they just are. He smiled. Linda said you were philosophical. Linda says a lot of things. Yes, he agreed. She does, but the important things she keeps to herself. I watched them together. The way he helped her with her pills without making a production of it. The way she touched his arm when he talked. Small gestures, quiet care. Nothing worth testing, everything worth keeping. He seems nice, I told Linda after he left. He's dying, she said. We both are, just on a timeline we can see. That's morbid. That's honest, the only kind of honest I have left. She was washing the sunflower stems, cutting them at an angle to help them last longer. He knows everything, she said. About Richard, about the trial, about what I did, and he's still here. That's something. It's everything, or nothing, I can't tell anymore. Maybe it doesn't matter which. She looked at me then, really looked at me. When did you become so wise? When I watched my sister destroy herself for a truth she already knew. The sunflowers looked bright in her kitchen, too bright for the circumstances, but maybe that was the point. Maybe you needed something unnecessarily beautiful when everything else was necessarily hard. Can I ask you something? I said. Why stop now? If you could go back, knowing everything you know now, would you still meet Richard? She thought about it while arranging the sunflowers in a vase. Yes, she said finally. Why? Because without Richard, I never would have met Robert. Without the fake illness, I never would have gotten real sick. Without the test, I never would have learned that love isn't something you measure. It's something you witness. That's an expensive lesson. All the important ones are. She carried the vase to her dining room table, set it in the center where the light would hit it in the morning. The Kidney Foundation called today, she said. There's a match, in Michigan, young man who died in a car accident. I'm third on the list, but the first 2 aren't ready. Surgery could be next week. I felt my heart stop, then start again. Linda, that's incredible. Is it? You could be healthy again, really healthy. I could be a person living with someone else's kidney. That's not the same as healthy. It's better than dying. Everything's better than dying. That's a low bar. But I could see something in her eyes. Not quite hope, but the shadow of hope, the possibility of possibility. Will you do it? Robert thinks I should. What do you think? She touched one of the sunflower petals, gentle, like she was afraid it might fall off. I think I'm tired of dying slowly. Either I die quick or I live different, but this middle ground is killing me in ways that have nothing to do with kidneys. Then do it. Come with me. Of course. She smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen since before Richard. Before the testing, before everything went wrong in the process of proving what was already wrong. You know what's funny, she said. What? Richard sent me a wedding announcement. He's marrying that woman from Dallas, 6 months after meeting her. Same timeline as me. That's not funny, that's pathetic. It's both, but here's the thing, I want to send them a gift. Why would you do that? Because I won, not the trial, not the money, but the test. He showed me exactly who he was, and she's about to find out. That's worth a toaster. We laughed then, real laughter. The kind that hurts because it's fighting with tears for the same space. Don't send a toaster, I said. What then? A kidney-shaped cookie jar. That's horrible. That's perfect. We were still laughing when Robert called. Just checking in, he said, making sure she'd taken her evening medications. Small care, daily attention, the opposite of grand gestures and dramatic tests. He loves you, I said after she hung up. He's grateful for company in his suffering. That's the same thing. Is it? At our age, yes. She nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. I'm definitely right. How do you know? Because he's not trying to prove anything. He's just there, every day, doing the small things that add up to big things. Like bringing sunflowers. Like bringing sunflowers. We cleaned up dinner together, washed dishes, put away leftovers, normal things that felt sacred after so much abnormality. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone, Linda said as I was leaving. Okay. The morning I took the activated charcoal. The morning I decided to go through with it. I stood in my bathroom for an hour, holding the glass, trying to decide if knowing the truth was worth losing everything. What made you drink it? Richard had left a note on my nightstand. Had to leave early, love you. But he'd written it on the back of a receipt, and on the front was a charge for a hotel room. The night he said he was at a business dinner. He was cheating. No, worse. He was alone. He'd gotten a hotel room in the same city where we lived just to avoid coming home to me. Jesus, Linda. So I drank the charcoal, and I kept drinking it, every day for a week, until the tests showed what I needed them to show, until I could prove what I already knew. That he didn't love you. That I didn't love me either. Not enough to leave without proof. Not enough to trust my own instincts. Not enough to choose myself over the idea of being chosen. She walked me to my car. The night was clear, stars visible despite the light pollution. The surgery, she said, if I don't make it. You'll make it. But if I don't, tell Richard he passed the test. What? Linda, no, he failed. He absolutely failed. He left when it got hard. That's what I was testing for. He did exactly what I expected him to do. Then how did he pass? By proving I was right not to trust him, by validating my instincts, by showing me that love isn't about passing or failing. It's about showing up or not showing up. He didn't show up. Test complete. That's insane logic. That's perfect logic. I needed to know if my distrust was justified. It was, I won. You lost everything. I lost nothing I actually had. You can't lose what was never real. I wanted to argue, but she was already walking back to her house. The house she'd bought with the settlement money from her second divorce. The house where she'd taken the activated charcoal. The house where Robert now brought sunflowers. The same house, everything different. I called her the next morning. I want to tell you something, I said. At 7 a.m. I'm proud of you. For what? Destroying my life with an elaborate lie. For surviving the truth. She was quiet for a long time. "The truth," she said finally, "is that I'm a 53-year-old woman on dialysis who faked an illness to test a man who was always going to fail. And now I'm dadding another dying person while waiting for a kidney from someone who's already dead. That's one truth. What's another? You're a survivor who learned the difference between being chosen and being loved. Is there a difference? Richard chose you. Robert loves you. How can you tell? Richard brought you dying carnations. Robert brings you sunflowers that will last longer than both of you." She laughed, but it sounded like crying, or maybe crying that sounded like laughter. At this point, it was hard to tell the difference. "The kidney transplant is tomorrow. I'm sitting in her hospital room now, watching her sleep. She looks peaceful, like someone who's finished fighting battles that were never worth winning. Robert is here too, has been all day. He's reading a book about kidney transplant recovery, taking notes, planning for a future that might not happen but deserves to be imagined anyway. She told me about the test," he said earlier. "What did you think?" "I think everyone tests love. She just did it more literally than most." "Would you have passed?" He looked at Linda sleeping, reached over to adjust her blanket. "I don't know," he said, "but I'm here now. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything. Or nothing, depending on how tomorrow goes." "That's morbid." "That's realistic. Linda taught me that. The difference between hope and delusion is just timing." Elinor sent flowers, real ones, orchids that will bloom for months if you care for them properly. The card said, "For the truth, however it arrives." Richard sent nothing, which was its own kind of message. "Mom is flying in tonight. She wanted to be here sooner, but Linda asked her to wait." "I don't want an audience for my maybe death," she'd said. "It's not maybe death, it's maybe life." Same thing, different angle. But she'd smiled when she said it. "The surgeon came by this afternoon. Explained the risks again. 20% chance of rejection, 10% chance of complications, 5% chance of death." "Those are good odds," he said. "Unless you're in the 5%, Linda replied. "That's one way to look at it. What's another?" 95% chance of living. Living differently. Still living." She'd nodded, signed the papers, made her peace with percentages. "I want to tell you something," she said after he left. "Last words. Last truth." I waited. I knew Richard was at that hotel alone because I followed him. What? I followed him, sat in the parking lot, watched him check in alone, sit at the bar alone, go to his room alone. Linda. I needed to know what was worse, him cheating or him choosing solitude over me. And solitude was worse. Cheating at least would have been about desire. This was about absence, the desire to be absent from me. That's when you decided to test him. That's when I realized I'd already been testing him, following him, checking his phone, reading his emails. The fake illness was just the final exam. Did he ever find out about you following him? I told him, during the trial, when I was on the stand and they asked if I'd done anything else deceptive. What did he say? Nothing, but his face did this thing, like he was relieved, like my stalking justified his leaving. Did it? Maybe, probably. We were two broken people breaking each other more. The kidney failure just gave us an excuse to stop. The nurse came in then to check Linda's vitals. Blood pressure elevated but acceptable, heart rate steady, fear unmeasurable but visible. You should go home, Linda told me after the nurse left. Get some sleep. I'm staying. I don't need. I'm staying. She nodded, closed her eyes, pretended to sleep. But I know she's awake, thinking about tomorrow, about kidneys and love and tests that can't be studied for. Robert is actually sleeping now, in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, his hand on hers, present even in unconsciousness. That's what Richard never understood. Love isn't about the grand gestures during crisis. It's about the quiet presence during the waiting. The waiting is almost over now. In 6 hours, they'll take Linda into surgery, remove her failing kidneys, replace them with one that works, or doesn't. Bodies are mysterious about what they accept and what they reject. Like hearts, I suppose. I asked Linda earlier if she was scared. Of dying? No. Of living with someone else's organ inside me? Yes. Why? Because then I'll owe my life to a stranger's death. That's a debt I can't repay. You repay it by living. Living how? Better, kinder, more honestly. That's a lot of pressure for a kidney. But she was smiling when she said it. The truth, the real truth that Linda hasn't admitted yet, is that she's already changed. The woman who drank activated charcoal to test a man's love would never have accepted Robert's quiet affection, would never have trusted Elinor's orchids, would never have sat through surgery prep without demanding guarantees. The test changed her, not in the way she expected, but in the way she needed. I'm going to tell you one last thing, Linda said an hour ago. You keep saying that. This time I mean it. Okay. If I die tomorrow. You won't. But if I do, I want you to know that I forgive him. Richard. Yes. Why? Because holding on to anger takes energy I don't have anymore. And because he was exactly who he showed me he was from the beginning. I just refused to see it. That's very evolved of you. That's very tired of me. There's a difference. Is there? Maybe not. Maybe exhaustion and wisdom look the same at 53. She's sleeping now, really sleeping. Her breathing deep and even, the monitors beeping steadily. Robert is awake again, watching her, memorizing her face in case tomorrow changes everything. She's going to be fine, I tell him. I know. Do you? No, but I need to believe it. That's my test. What test? Whether I can love someone who might die. Whether I can invest in a future that might not happen. Whether I can bring sunflowers to a woman who might not see them bloom. That's not a test, that's faith. Same thing, different word. Maybe he's right. Maybe all love is just faith dressed up as certainty. Maybe Linda's test was really about faith, whether Richard had it, whether she deserved it, whether it could survive truth. The answer was no on all counts. But that doesn't mean faith doesn't exist. It just means you can't test for it. You can only witness it. In orchids that bloom for months. In sunflowers that face the light. In a man who reads about kidney recovery while the woman he loves might not need the information. The surgeon just came in. One final check. One final signature. Any questions? He asked Linda. Just one, she said. The person whose kidney I'm getting, do you know anything about them? 23-year-old male, motorcycle accident, organ donor since he was 18. He chose this. 5 years before he needed to. Linda nodded. That's faith. That's generosity. Same thing, different organ. The surgeon smiled. First time I've seen him smile. I'll see you in the morning, he said. One way or another. Let's aim for the right way. After he left, Linda asked Robert and me to come closer. I need you both to promise me something, she said. We promised. If this works, if I wake up tomorrow with a working kidney and a second chance, I need you to stop me if I ever try to test anyone again. How would we stop you? Robert asked. Remind me of this moment. Remind me that I spent a year destroying everything to prove something that was already obvious. Remind me that tests only show you what you're looking for, not what's actually there. I promise, I said. I promise, Robert echoed. Good, Linda said. Now someone tell me a joke, something stupid, something that has nothing to do with kidneys or love or dying. Robert cleared his throat. A sunflower walks into a bar. That's terrible already, Linda laughed. The bartender says, why the long face? The sunflower says, I'm just facing the light like always. The bartender says, that's not funny. The sunflower says, I'm not trying to be funny, I'm trying to be honest. Linda stared at him. That's the worst joke I've ever heard. I know. Tell me another one. He did. One terrible joke after another until Linda was laughing so hard the nurses came to check on us. You need rest, they scolded. I need this more, Linda said. And maybe she was right. Maybe laughter before surgery is better than prayer. Maybe terrible jokes are better than perfect promises. Maybe Robert understood something Richard never did, that love isn't about passing tests. It's about showing up with sunflowers and terrible jokes and faith that tomorrow will be better than today. Or at least different. The sun is coming up now. They'll be here soon to take Linda to surgery. She's awake, has been for an hour, just lying there thinking. What are you thinking about? I asked. The dollar, she said. What dollar? The one the jury awarded me. My legal value. I never actually received it. Do you want it? No, I want to leave it uncollected. Let it exist in legal limbo forever. Proof that some things can't be valued, can't be measured, can't be tested. That's very philosophical. That's very final. There's a difference. Is there? She looked at me, really looked at me. My sister who faked an illness and found a truth, who tested love and discovered faith, who lost everything and might gain a kidney. Ask me tomorrow, she said. But tomorrow isn't promised. Only this moment, this room, this truth that we're all failing tests we didn't know we were taking. They're here now, time to go. Linda is looking at Robert. He's looking back. No words, no promises, no tests. Just presence. Just faith. Just the hope that tomorrow she'll wake up different. Not better, not fixed, just different. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. The gurney is rolling now, down the hall, around the corner, through doors that only open one way. Robert and I are in the waiting room. 6 hours to wait, 6 hours to have faith, 6 hours to not test anything. She's going to be fine, he says. You keep saying that. I need to keep saying that. Why? Because if I stop, I might remember that I'm dying too, that my kidneys are failing too, that I'm in love with a woman who might not survive the morning, and even if she does, we're still just two broken people comparing medications and counting days. That's honest. That's terrifying. Same thing. Different organ. We sit in silence, waiting, having faith, not testing. And I think about Linda's question, about whether knowing the truth was worth losing everything. The answer is yes. Not because the truth set her free, but because the lie was killing her faster than her kidneys. She drank activated charcoal to fake an illness, but the real poison was the relationship itself. The need to test, the need to prove, the need to measure love like a kidney function test. Richard failed her test, but the test failed them both. And now she's in surgery, getting a kidney from a stranger who had more faith in humanity than she had in her fiancé. That has to mean something. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe meaning is just another test we give life, and life keeps failing it, and we keep living anyway. Robert is reading his book about kidney recovery again, making notes, planning for a future that might start in 6 hours or might never start at all. Read me something, I say. What? From your book, read me something hopeful. He flips through pages, stops, reads. The transplanted kidney often begins producing urine immediately, a sign that the body has accepted the new organ. This moment, often called the golden hour, is considered a positive indicator of long-term success. The golden hour, I repeat. It's not really golden, it's just urine. Still, it's something. It's everything, or nothing, depending. On what? On whether it happens. We go back to waiting, back to not testing, back to faith. 4 hours now. 4 hours of Robert bringing me coffee I don't drink, of me pretending to read magazines I can't focus on, of both of us checking our phones for updates that don't come. Tell me about the sunflowers, I say. What about them? Why sunflowers? They follow the light, he says. Even when it's cloudy, even when it seems pointless, they keep turning toward where the sun should be. That's beautiful. That's survival, looking for light even when you can't see it. Is that what Linda does? That's what she's learning to do. The test was her looking for darkness and finding it. Now she's learning to look for light. With you. With or without me. That's the point. The light exists whether I bring sunflowers or not. 3 hours now. Eleanor is here, sitting across from us, not talking, just present, holding orchids that will bloom for months. My son is an idiot, she says finally. We don't disagree. But Linda, she pauses, Linda is something else. What? Brave, stupid, desperate, honest, all of it at once. That's a lot to be. That's what it takes to survive betrayal. You have to be everything at once until you figure out which part to keep. Which part should she keep? Eleanor looks at the orchids. The part that accepts kidneys from strangers, that's faith. Or desperation. Same thing, different organ. 2 hours now. Mom is here, flew in early, sitting beside me, holding my hand like I'm the one in surgery. She did this to herself, Mom says. I know. But she didn't deserve what Richard did. I know. But she also kind of did. I know. I don't know how to feel about any of this. Neither do I. Is that okay? It has to be. We sit with our confusion, our anger, our hope, our faith that's really just organized panic. 1 hour now. The surgeon is here. We all stand. Robert drops his book. Eleanor clutches her orchids. Mom squeezes my hand so hard it hurts. The surgery went well, he says. We all breathe. The kidney is functioning. Good urine output. No immediate signs of rejection. The golden hour, Robert whispers. Exactly, the surgeon smiles. She's asking for you, all of you. We follow him through doors that only open one way, down halls that smell like disinfectant and hope, to a recovery room where Linda is lying with her eyes closed. I can hear you all breathing, she says without opening her eyes. It's very loud. How do you feel? I ask. Like someone took out 2 organs and put in one. The math doesn't add up. But you're okay. She opens her eyes, looks at each of us. Mom, Eleanor, Robert, me. I peed, she says. We all laugh, even Eleanor, even the nurses. Golden hour, Robert says, taking her hand. Golden shower, Linda corrects. Let's be honest about what we're celebrating. You're terrible, I tell her. I'm alive, she says. With someone else's kidney. That's terrible and wonderful, and I don't know what to do with any of it. You live, Eleanor says, placing the orchids on Linda's bedside table. You live differently, but you live. For how long? For however long. That's all anyone gets. Linda nods, closes her eyes again, but she's smiling. Did Richard, she starts to ask, then stops. Never mind, I don't need to know. And that's how I know she's going to be okay. Not because the kidney works, not because the golden hour happened, but because she stopped asking about the test. She stopped needing to know if she passed or failed. She just needs to know she survived. The doctor says she can go home in 3 days if everything continues well. Robert has already rearranged his dialysis schedule to be here. Mom is staying for a week. Eleanor sent a cleaning service to Linda's house to prepare for her return. Small gestures, quiet care, the opposite of tests. I want to tell you something, Linda said earlier, when it was just her and me. Another last thing. A first thing, the first true thing. Okay. I'm grateful. For the kidney. For the test. Linda. Not for what it did to Richard or to me, but for what it taught me. Which is that love isn't pass or fail. It's show up or don't show up. And most people don't show up. Not because they don't love you, but because showing up is harder than leaving. Richard left. Richard was already gone. The test just made it visible. And Robert. Robert shows up. Even when showing up means sitting in a dialysis center, even when it means terrible jokes, even when it means loving someone who poisoned herself to prove a point that didn't need proving. That's love. That's faith disguised as love, or love disguised as faith. I can't tell the difference anymore. Does it matter? She thought about it, really thought about it. No, she said finally. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he's here, that you're here, that Mom's here, that Alina brought orchids that will outlive us all. That's morbid. That's realistic, but also hopeful. Things can outlive us. Orchids, kindness, the memory of showing up when showing up was hard. She's sleeping now, real sleep, healing sleep. Robert is reading his recovery book. Mom is knitting something that might be a scarf or might be a failure. Alina is reading the newspaper, occasionally making disapproving sounds at the state of the world. And I'm sitting here, thinking about tests. We're all taking them all the time, testing love, testing faith, testing ourselves. Most of the time we fail, not because we're failures, but because the tests themselves are flawed. You can't test love any more than you can test faith. You can only witness it. In sunflowers that follow light, in orchids that bloom for months, in kidneys that work when they shouldn't, in people who show up when leaving would be easier. Linda tested Richard and found him wanting. But really, she tested herself and found herself worthy. Worthy of better love, worthy of quieter care, worthy of someone who brings sunflowers instead of dying carnations. The golden hour has passed. The kidney is working. The test is over. But the real work, the work of living without tests, of trusting without proof, of loving without guarantees, that work is just beginning. And Linda, my sister who faked an illness and found a truth, who lost a fiancé and gained a kidney, who tested love and discovered faith, she's ready for that work. Or maybe not ready, but willing. And maybe that's all any of us can be, willing to live without tests, willing to love without proof, willing to accept kidneys from strangers and sunflowers from dying men and orchids from would-be mothers-in-law. Willing to fail and survive and fail again and keep surviving. Are you okay? Robert asks me. I'm thinking. About what? About tests, about how we're all taking them and failing them and taking them again. And maybe the point isn't to pass. Maybe the point is to learn something from the failing. What did Linda learn? I look at my sister, sleeping, healing, living with someone else's kidney and her own hard-won wisdom. She learned that the only test that matters is whether you can live with the truth. Can she? We're about to find out. That sounds like another test. No, I say, that sounds like life. And maybe that's what I needed to tell you. Not that Linda was right to test Richard. Not that Richard was wrong to leave. Not that love can be measured or faith can be proven. But that we're all taking tests we don't know we're taking. We're all failing in ways we won't understand until later. We're all looking for proof of something that can't be proven. And the lucky ones, the ones like Linda, we figure out that the test isn't the point. The point is what you do after you fail. Whether you drink activated charcoal or accept a kidney. Whether you send carnations or bring sunflowers. Whether you leave or show up. Whether you keep testing or finally stop. Linda has stopped. And that's how I know she's going to live.